And 2023 was a challenging year for environmental concerns here in Canada as the country saw examples of the effects of climate change. For a recap, we were joined now by Blair Feltmate, head of the Intact Centre for Climate Adaptation at the University of Waterloo. Thanks for joining us. Let's start with the wildfires that encompass not just, normally we're used to it happening in Western Canada, but it was all over the entire country and really the globe, if you want to take the goggles off. What's your reaction to how the world reacted to these record-setting wildfires?
I think in about the last 3 years, through wildfires that are becoming more pervasive around the world and certainly nationally, but also followed by flooding or extreme heat events, increasingly so people are coming to the realization that climate change is real. It has happened, is happening, and will continue to happen. And hopefully they're tuning into the last part, will continue to happen. As bad as these events have been, let's say 2023 being the summer of the wildfire for Canada, things are going to get increasingly challenging going forward. We are not going backwards on climate change, so we need to prepare rapidly for wildfire, flooding, and extreme heat.
And it's not just warming, though, right? Because obviously we are dealing with unseasonably warm winter right now. What else can people expect, during the winter season when it comes to climate change and people across the country? What could we be bracing for here?
Well, one of the problems is simply that we're not building sufficient snow load in the country over the winter, that in the spring when that snow melts, it goes into refuges or areas that can be the water supply for communities across the country going forward. Without that snow load in the winter, there could be more conditions in the summer whereby communities simply don't have adequate water supply, as one example.
And then in that case, I'm an amateur, right? You're the expert here. Now, if the ground is drier because there's just less snow accumulation than melting, does that set the stage again for an even worse wildfire season?
Yes, you are. Amateur though you may suggest you are correct nonetheless. So basically, the conditions for increasing wildfires in the country are that Canada is getting hotter. We're about 1.7 degrees Celsius warmer now in southern Canada than we were 70 years ago. We have more heat domes occurring in the country due to a weakening of the jet stream, which creates hotter conditions ripe for setting wildfires in motion. With warmer weather, we have more lightning strikes. And then, as you alluded to, we have drier soils. So it's a combination of those factors are making wildfire is going to be increasingly problematic going forward.
Now, COP28, they had a single day or a couple of days dedicated to health and how that could be greatly affected by climate change for people who may have missed that, just tuning in now. How does climate change, extreme changes in the weather we're dealing with, affect our actual personal health?
Well, there's two ways. One is, just sticking with the wildfire for the moment, fine particulate smoke particles that are about 2.5 microns in diameter, in other words, infinitesimally small. They can travel hundreds, if not thousands of kilometers into areas not affected directly by the wildfire, not in the line of wildfire, but you can ingest those particles into your deep into the recesses of your lungs. And for people with respiratory challenges, this can prove very problematic. But the other thing we're finding is that's physical health. Mental health is also being impacted. The psychosocial stress or mental health that people are experiencing when their houses burn or their homes flood out, that is substantial. And now what we're looking in terms of a mental health impact, and now what we're documenting are spikes in medications to deal with psychosocial stress and mental health stress and counseling services. So the manifestation of climate change is affecting, permeates pretty much all aspects of people's lives.
Obviously, this is a huge story all year. It has been for multiple years. I've spoken to some environmentalists who say that we basically made our bed now, industrial revolution, everything that followed after that, wars, continued industrialization in massive countries like China and India. We've kind of made our bed. We have to sleep in it now. Is it more so we have to learn you're part of the climate adaptation, is it more about adapting and living with the conditions that we've created? Or is there something that we can do really in the short term that could prevent these horrible things potentially happening?
We should be focusing on mitigating greenhouse gas emissions to slow down the rate of change. So that's a good thing to do. And that's where 90% of the attention on climate change has been directed over the last 10, 15, 20 years. However, given the fact that climate change is irreversible and the most we can do is slow it down, we have to learn to adapt to extreme weather risk. The good news is we know exactly what to do in Canada in particular to mitigate risk due to wildfires, impacting homes, businesses, and communities in forested and grassland regions. We know what to do to limit the impacts of flooding for homes and communities that might otherwise be wiped out due to extreme weather or extreme flooding. And we know what to do to prepare for extreme heat. The problem in Canada is that although we know the problems and we know the solutions, we're not mobilizing these solutions nearly quickly enough. And by the way, that's the same at a global scale.
Right. Okay. Well, I wish we could speak longer on this, maybe for like an hour, 2 hours. We don't have a CP24 podcast. That'd be great. But Blair Feltmate, I look forward to speaking to you in the future about some of those adaptations and what is getting in our way of actually implementing those. You are the head of Intact Center on Climate Adaptation, University of Waterloo. Thanks for joining us here on your weekend.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.